Welcome back to Purposely Peaceful. This is my first video podcast ever. It only took me 40 episodes to do it. So if you're listening to the audio, the information to find me on YouTube will be in the show notes. But today we are starting a brand new series that I've been so excited to share with you because relationships are one of my most favorite subjects to talk about. Not just because I'm a therapist, but because of what I've learned through my own life. And relationships will either become one of the greatest sources of peace in your life or the greatest sources of suffering. And the difference isn't luck, it's skill. And yes, there's some inner work here. So if you interact with other human beings, this series is for you. If you're married, dating, long-term relationships, adult children, friends, family, just people. Now, before I jump into the skills, I want to answer a bigger question. Why relationships? Why has someone who spends so much time talking about inner peace suddenly decide to spend the next several weeks talking about relationships? Well, because I didn't just start with relationships. I started with peace. Let's go backwards a little bit to explain how I even got here. How did I decide that the pursuit of peace was going to become the filter through which I was going to look at life with? A filter that would eventually not only shape how I lived, but also how I viewed every relationship around me. Most of my life, I didn't feel peace. I didn't feel safe. I didn't choose the right people. I didn't really choose where I was going to land. I just sort of ended up wherever life took me. Episode 1 gives you the real story, but honestly, I didn't even intentionally choose my friends. It just kind of unfolded. As a painfully shy and anxious child, I didn't know how to quiet my mind, much less understand what a healthy relationship even looked like. I was just trying to get through life. And then 2020 happened, which happened to everyone. And a lot of things came up for a lot of people. But what became painfully clear to me was something that I had been avoiding for a long time. I was low-key miserable. I didn't want to be a therapist anymore. I didn't want to have a boss. I didn't know how to help my children who needed me to be more emotionally present than ever because some of them were struggling in different ways. My marriage was good, but pressure and unexpected circumstance just made life harder. We had the big house that I thought would make me happy. It didn't. My husband finally had the truck he wanted. He was at the height of his career in corporate sales. Those things brought excitement, they brought temporary joy, but they didn't bring peace, not for either of us. It was a slow burn, this realization that I needed something that no amount of money, success, or achievement could ever buy. And then someone I deeply respect, who is much, much wiser than me, said something that completely changed my life, and I still remember it so clearly. You do all this and you do all that, but you don't even know what you're looking for, which was true. What you are really looking for is relief, not just any relief. What you're really looking for is inner peace. Still, to this day, that was the biggest aha moment of my life. This discovery launched a full-on internal restructuring of how I lived, how I perceived my life. Everything changed after that. Seeing life through a different lens was everything. Peace became the filter. Everything else started to come into focus. I began asking myself one question over and over again. Does this move me toward peace or away from it? That question changed everything. It changed how I viewed my habits, my career, my fears, assumptions, judgments, the stories I told myself, the boundaries I wasn't keeping, the ways I overextended myself, the people I surrounded myself with, the way that I treated others, and the way that I allowed others to treat me. Sure, there was a tremendous amount of inner work, but it became much, much bigger than just healing myself. It became about creating a life that was actually aligned with what I wanted, not just for me, but for my husband, my children, and our family. When I say I wanted peace, I didn't mean becoming a monk living alone in a cave somewhere. I wanted to laugh. I wanted adventure. I wanted meaningful work, a beautiful marriage, deep relationships, freedom, a full life. I simply wanted to experience all of it to the fullest from a greater place of peace within myself. Over time, something became kind of impossible to ignore. The quality of my peace was deeply connected to the quality of my relationships, not just my marriage, every relationship, because the people closest to us have the ability to become one of the greatest sources of peace in our lives, or one of the greatest sources of suffering. That's why we're here. This series isn't really about relationships. It's about creating a peaceful life. Relationships just happen to be one of the biggest places where this pursuit is tested. So where are we starting here? Relationships are one of those topics where I could probably spend years talking about, which I will not do. There are so many directions that we could go in, but for now, I'm just going to focus on the foundations, and every episode will continue to build on the other. And when I say the basics, I don't mean surface level stuff. That isn't me. I mean the things that consistently surprise my clients because they've never heard relationships explained quite this way. And the truth is, we're all on different paths. We have different histories. We have different personalities, relationships. Some of what I will share will resonate immediately, and some of it may not apply right away, and that's totally okay. Take what serves you and leave what doesn't. And if something strikes a chord, or you have a very specific question that you would like a lot more insight on, please reach out to me. I'll have my email down below, because this series is really meant to become a conversation. So this brings me back to the first lesson relationships ever taught me. If I had to pick the very first lesson, it would be self-respect. Here's something so many of us don't want to admit, or we just haven't given it the time. We don't actually have a clear definition of what respect is, more specifically, self-respect. When we're emotionally attached to someone, it's incredible how blurry those lines can become. We justify, we minimize, we tell ourselves that they're having a bad day. We try to see the best in someone. I'm guilty there. And sometimes we do it to our own detriment. I learned that lesson the hard way, and I'm sure some of you have too. When I finally left that relationship that started in my teenage years, it ended in my early 20s, and I spent a lot of time healing. During that season, I came across one of my old journals from the beginning of that relationship. I sat down, I started reading it. That young 20-something version of me could not believe what she was reading. Page after page, there was disrespect, emotional abuse, manipulation, things that somehow at the time I convinced myself were normal. I remember reading it and crying uncontrollably, like I was sobbing. It brought up so much sadness, but it also brought up so much anger. Not just because of what had happened, but because I had accepted it for as long as I did. I remember shredding every single page after reading it because I couldn't stand what I had just read. So I tore them up and I threw them all in the fireplace and I burned them. I never wanted to read those words again. I was horrified. Even talking about it now, it still makes me emotional. But the good part of all of this is that I found my way through, and that chapter of my life became the foundation I would eventually build my entire life on. That experience completely changed the way that I define self-respect. For me, self-respect is not some abstract idea way out there or some motivational quote you hang on the wall. It has become incredibly clear. You have to decide what is okay and what is not okay. Because when we're hurt, sad, disappointed, or triggered, it's easy to question ourselves and not see it clearly. We could be thinking, am I overreacting? Maybe they didn't mean it. Maybe I'm being too sensitive. But over time, I realized something. It's about becoming so clear on your values that you know when something no longer aligns with them. Today, my definition of self-respect is skillfully clear. I do not let anyone talk down to me. Nobody. That doesn't mean I become loud. It doesn't mean that I argue. It doesn't mean that I even need to prove a point. It means I pay attention. Some of the things that I hear a lot are, I told them my idea and they said it was stupid. They told me I could never get that job. They told me I wasn't talented enough. Or in my case, I remember hearing, nobody is ever going to love you with 3 kids. over and over and over. And when someone tries to convince me that I'm incapable, that I'm not talented, that I can't accomplish something, my nervous system immediately sounds the alarm, like it's a physical response. And it's almost like this quiet voice, or my body is saying, absolutely not, we're not doing that. And it's not from a place of anger, it's from clarity. I stay calm, I observe, I think about it. I sit with it for a few minutes or a few days, it just depends. Even something as simple as someone consistently giving me weird looks or making little comments to chip away at me, I don't need confrontation every single time. I simply think, okay, I see you now. And then I just make a quiet adjustment. I create an emotional boundary, a mental boundary. I'm still kind. I still wish them well. I'm still respectful. But you don't get to get close to me anymore. You don't get access to the deepest parts of my life. If you've listened to this podcast for any amount of time, you'll probably notice a theme. I'm not generally very loud. I'm not demanding. I make moves in silence. Now, sometimes life does require us to speak up in the moment. I've done that too. There are absolutely situations where that's necessary, but many times the boundary isn't an argument. The boundary is simply changing someone's level of access to you. To me, that's self-respect. And over time, your self-respect becomes one of the strongest boundaries you'll ever have. But healthy relationships don't stop with self-respect. Respect has to move in both directions. The healthiest relationships I have ever experienced, personally and professionally, are built on mutual respect. Mutual respect means I recognize that you are your own individual, that you have your own hopes, your own dreams, goals, fears, your own life experiences, and I genuinely want what's best for you. That word, genuinely, is important because care isn't performative. You can't play pretend here. The people we allow closest to us need to be well-intentioned. That doesn't mean they'll always get it right. It means we believe they're trying and that the trying is leading to progress. Mutual respect also changes the way that we communicate. We don't resort to name-calling, belittling, humiliation, trying to win, none of that. None of it strengthens a relationship. One of the biggest things I look for, especially in marriage, is whether both people still believe in each other's positive intent. Meaning, do you genuinely believe this person wants what's best for you? Because once that belief disappears, everything starts getting filtered through suspicion. Every comment, every disagreement, every misunderstanding. Now we are assuming the worst instead of the best. That's a dangerous place for any relationship to live in. Mutual respect isn't about perfection. I've never seen a perfect relationship in my entire career, not one. There is always something asking for more attention. Always another opportunity to grow. Growth changes relationships. And one of the biggest things I've been talking about lately, both here on the podcast, but also social media, is this inevitable truth. If you're doing the inner work, you're changing, you're evolving, you are healing, you're becoming a little wiser with time. And growth creates growing pains. Sometimes the version of you that once tolerated something simply doesn't anymore. That doesn't automatically mean something is wrong or that the relationship is over. Sometimes it means that you've grown. And I know this to be true in my own life, that there was a time where I tolerated almost every kind of disrespect you could imagine. I was young. I didn't know any better. I didn't tell people because, honestly, the truth felt too shameful. But little by little, and with time, I matured, I learned, became wiser. Eventually, it became impossible to ignore that what I had accepted wasn't healthy anymore. There's a saying in Spanish, mejor sola que mal acompañada. It means better alone than in bad company. That became my motto, and I'm so grateful that it did because eventually I found someone who loved me, kids and all. Today, my marriage is generally thriving, but that doesn't mean that it's perfect. There are still moments where one of us realizes we've outgrown a behavior, an attitude, a style of communication. Sometimes we catch ourselves drifting towards something that feels less respectful than who we want to be. When that happens, it's not the end of the relationship. It's an invitation. Or the relationship can fall apart here. People get stuck. But we need to have hard conversations to become better partners, to become better people. And we do, not because we're special, but because we're committed. Because relationships require maintenance, they require humility and respect, and perhaps most importantly, they require genuine care. So quickly people forget that you have to care for yourself, but also for your loved ones. Anger, jealousy, all of those things can interrupt our ability to care with love and sincerity. I truly believe that the best relationships ask us to become more than we currently are. Not because someone is trying to change us, but because love naturally stretches us. It asks us to become more patient, more understanding, more honest, more emotionally mature. That's hard work, but it's beautiful work. I've also learned something else during my own healing. I had to become much pickier about who I allowed into my life. Not everyone deserves unlimited access to you. Some relationships naturally grow deeper. Others naturally become more distant. That's okay. Sometimes protecting your peace means becoming more intentional about the company that you keep. After years of doing this work personally, professionally, and through supporting so many of my clients, I've never seen a perfect relationship. Not once. But I have seen relationships heal. I have seen marriages rebuild. I have seen families reconnect. I've seen friendships become stronger, not because these people got lucky, but because they learned skills that were rooted in respect, in self-awareness, in accountability, and with genuine care. That's what this series is about. It's not about becoming perfect or finding perfect people, none of that. I don't think that's possible, but becoming the kind of person capable of building healthier, more peaceful relationships, because the quality of our relationships shape the quality of our peace. It's inevitable. And if we're serious about living a peaceful life, we can't ignore the people we're sharing life with. They are intricately involved. Next week is an episode I've been looking forward to for a very long time. My husband Jimmy is finally joining me here on Purposely Peaceful. If everything goes according to plan, we'll even have a video. Although if you've been around for any length of time, you'll know that my life rarely goes according to plan. So today you heard my perspective as a therapist, as someone who has spent years doing the inner work. Next week, you'll hear from the man who's lived this journey alongside me. Some of the greatest lessons I have learned about love, marriage, communication, and growth, I've learned because of this relationship. Not because we've done it perfectly, but because we've had to learn these skills together. And it's not always easy. I honestly don't know where this conversation is going to go. We don't really have anything planned out. I think that's what excites me the most, but it also makes me just as nervous because I have no idea what we're going to share. We will definitely be picking topics, but if you've ever wondered what two people sound like when they're still learning, still growing, still choosing each other, I hope that you'll join us next week. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. And until then, remember that the quality of your relationships shapes the quality of your peace.